thoughts?
Well, I think that's actually the right public statement. President Obama and Secretary Kerry need to be able to say those things. This is a NATO ally. This is a country that has elected Erdogan. Now, you go back and you look at the history of Erdogan, no one should be surprised that the secularists inside the military have decided to take over and to at least launch a coup. The concern that I have right now is that the coup doesn't look like it worked. So if you go back to the last time this happened in 1997, the coup didn't work either, but the prime minister was forced to resign within several months after that because he was weakened. So I think what's going to happen, Greta, is one of two things. Either if this coup, clearly didn't work, and the police who are loyal to Erdogan, the local police, are going to take to the streets and scare, I think, Turkish people into following the rules, and we are going to see from Erdogan and his team an aggressive outreach to try to take back power in any way that he can. And the question is going to be, is it going to become even worse in terms of freedoms and democracy inside Turkey because Erdogan is grabbing power? Or are the people going to, say enough is enough, and we're probably going to have citizen-on-citizen, violence? It could be bloody. I'm fearful that this Turkish ally of ours, which truly they are a great NATO ally of ours, is going to start experiencing some very in-depth violence and problems, and it's going to take several months, if not longer, to figure out, who's going to be in charge.
Well, you say outreach. I don't know if I use the term outreach because this is a president who's got more journalists in prison than I think any other nation. He refers to women who don't have children as half human. He's got quite an interesting background, to put it lightly. He is a NATO ally, but is he a good friend of the United States, Rick? Beyond all this, is he really our friend?
No, he hasn't been great. The one thing, if you look at Syria, he has said Assad should go. He's been focused on Assad. He's been trying to get the U.S. to focus on getting rid of Assad. That's the U.S. policy. So he hasn't done a ton in terms of going after ISIS. But no, I think the answer to your question is he hasn't been a great friend of ours. So that's why I say the public face of President Obama and everyone should be, he's legitimately elected. We stand for, that. But I think we can do a lot. We can work with the military. The secularists inside the military have always been our friend. We know that they're for democracy. We know that they have seen this Istanbul bombing, and they were very uncomfortable with the leadership of Erdogan getting too close to the Islamists, and they were thinking this is why we've had the bombing. Then the Nice attack, I think, was just the icing on the cake for the military leaders, the secularists, who said, if we don't do something to right this ship back in Turkey, steer us away from the Islamists, we are going to see more violence like the Istanbul bombing and Nice. So this was a move by the military. My concern, though, Greta, is that it doesn't look like it was successful, partly because over the last several years, Erdogan has replaced secular generals with his own Islamist types. So the military itself has been changing, the leadership of the military has been changing, and that's a concern because now that they tried this coup, it doesn't look like it has worked. We'll wait and see, but if it hasn't worked, I think we're going to see bloodshed over the next several months for our ally, Turkey.
And I should point out, it looks like on the screen, but the viewers can make just as much of a judgment on this as I can. It looks like civilians fighting against a tank, people in a tank. Obviously, there's fighting going on. Rick, as I watch
we're going to be able to see military versus police.
Rick, it seems as I watch this, I don't know if there's going to be a change in power or not, or whether President Erdogan is going to regain power, but you have to sort of contrast it against, we just had a change of power in Britain, and how different there was a change of power in Britain with Cameron stepping down to May, and then you've got some nations like South Sudan, where right now there's a civil war where the president is fighting with the vice president, and now you have this where you have a military coup. And Erdogan, who has not necessarily been our best friend, but he is elected, so we are publicly supporting him. But if he doesn't regain control, what's next? We've seen these countries where these horrible leaders we don't like get overthrown or get changed, and what comes along is worse for us, Rick.
Yeah, I see that. And I don't have that fear in Turkey because they do have an incredible history. The military has an incredible history of guarding against the Islamists. So this is, what people have to understand is that what's happening inside Turkey is a reaction to say that the elected official, Erdogan, is getting too close to the Islamists. And so people are rising up, military types are rising up and saying, we don't want this future for us. So, that's why my concern is with Erdogan. He's going to try to crush them and may go even more towards the Islamists. But if he's removed, I think it would actually be, the military would make sure that the next leader would be somebody that was more in line with the secularists.
The problem is, Rick, as you and I discuss it in such a clinical fashion, about the Islamics and the secularists. What we look at the pictures, though, is a very enraged situation where you've got people fighting, you've got tanks on the street, you've got airports shut down, you have Facebook, YouTube. It doesn't seem like sort of a clinical, intellectual discussion when you look on the street. It looks like a big problem. It looks like a huge danger.
Well, that's exactly right, and I think it's a good point, because when you look at the military and who they're loyal to, it's different than the local police. So imagine if our military was fighting with the local police. The jurisdictional fights of who's controlling whom and all of the citizenry taking different sides, we definitely have a major problem that's developing. And, for all of us who have so many friends inside Turkey, tourism is obviously going to be greatly affected. This is a problem for the United States in that, as a member of NATO, Turkey is not only a great ally, but somebody that we rely on Middle East policy for. Now, look, we've had problems with Turkey because of their Islamist leanings away from their traditional Middle East policy. For instance, the flotilla, when President Erdogan sent the flotilla to Gaza, it really enraged the traditional allies like the United States and Israel. And they had a diplomatic, cease, basically, with the Israelis. That has been fixed only recently. So we've had a long history with Erdogan not doing the traditional Turkish policy, and that's upset the apple cart, so to speak, with so many allies. And if you look at just Syria, Greta, the Turks have fought with everybody. They fought with the Russians. They've been, not on the same page with the Americans. They're literally picking fights with every side of the Syrian conflict.
Well, right now, here's what we do know, is we do know that we don't know who's in charge of the country. We don't know where President Erdogan is. He seems to be either in hiding or someplace else. At least we don't know where he is. The military and the police are at each other's throats. People are on the streets. There are tanks there. The airport is shut down. There's no YouTube. State media has been shut down, at least some of it. And we've got a situation where, I don't know where this leads at this point. With the...
Well, look, I was going to say I talked to a friend inside Istanbul tonight, right before I got on air here, and I asked him, do you have any information of what's going on? And he said, we really don't. We've heard formal statements. He thought at first there was some sort of terrorist attack in Taksim Square. And so the information inside, I think, is not perfect, and it's not fair. So when we see the fighting on both sides, I think there's a reaction from individuals inside Turkey with very limited information. And so that's one of the problems when you have the power like Erdogan to be able to shut down media because you control the media. That's extremely problematic. That's not something that we want in NATO. And I have to say, I have to go back to, we have seen this coming for a long time in terms of Erdogan's move towards the Islamists. We've been very uncomfortable with this, but we haven't spoken out enough. I think that the U.S. policy, the U.S. muscular foreign policy, needs to be much better to push our allies when something takes place right in the beginning. When we first saw Erdogan shutting down some of the media, when he was arresting journalists, we should have had a much more forceful reaction than what we've had.
Rick, thank you for joining us. Now to what U.S. intelligence is hearing at this hour. Fox News Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge joins us, and I just want to repeat that apparently President Obama and Secretary Kerry have